This
Short?
is a we're a first shleima for all the cholim of Klal Yisrael and for
Yeah.
protection of all Jews in the world and in Israel.
Alright.
Okay, so I was reading something the other day about emunah and recognizing where things come from, and it said there sometimes people that become wealthy think it's through their own efforts. It is through their efforts and hishtadlut, but ultimately it was granted to them by Hashem, and they have to recognize it as such. Because unfortunately, some people think that they God. They think that they're all powerful, and they everything through their own efforts, everything comes through their efforts, and no one else or no other entity. So we need to just be cognizant of that and recognizing that it comes. You put your ishtadlut in, and a business deal or or whatever thing one needs in terms of business success will come. It might come from another source, but it'll only come if the effort is put in, and we need to recognize it. So it's a lifetime's work, but as long as it's recognized as such.
Good. I think what Kevin said there is absolutely brilliant, is that the truth of it is Hashem gives us everything, and when we feel a bit arrogant, we must know that even the ability to pick up the phone and have speech is from Hashem. I remember when my
And
mom got
it's
frontal temporal lobe dementia, and Kevin obviously had a scare with his mom when she wasn't well, and Gavin saw his parents get older, and so is Arthur, is that speech is a gift from Hashem. The ability to absorb information and comprehend that information is a gift from Hashem. The ability to communicate to others in a way that we influence them is a gift from Hashem. These are all faculties, and they're not only meant to earn money, they're meant to teach people Torah and to give to them, truly. What were you going to say, Kevin? Apologies.
it says in Ashrei Patech et Yadecha, Hashem opens his hands. And you see Sephardim when they say it, when they bench, they do this. It's to give to us. That's a Patech et Yadecha. So one has to think of that when you say Ashrei. So that's also where that ties into this.
I agree. I agree with you. And whenever we get by the way, arrogant about our abilities, I encourage everybody at that time to pick up something they don't have mastery of and try and start through it. Doesn't have to be a Gemara. It's always nice when it's Torah learning, but even a subject that's not familiar to them, and let them feel what it's like not to comprehend it and battle with it. Believe me, it's a humbling experience.
Well,
Really,
I can pretty much pick up any book and experience that, so it won't be a problem for me.
very, very.
Then I'm here with Dana.
All right. So, guys, let's just go through some one or two concepts quickly. I was kind of sick when I spoke to you last time, so Gavin and Arthur had a chance to read, because obviously it was a refer for them, which I wanted. So I just want to cover a couple of grounds very quickly. So the Mishnah continues its discussion of the surcharges that are imposed on the defendant who swore falsely. If one said to an unpaid custodian, "Where's my deposit that I entrusted to your care?" the custodian replied, "It was lost, and I'm exempt from payment." And the owner said to him, "I assure you that your response is true." And the custodian said, "Amen," thus accepting the oath. And afterwards, witnesses testify against the custodian that he consumed it himself, pays only the principal, which is the value of the deposit. If, however, he admitted on his own accord that he swore falsely, he pays the principal and the one for surcharge and brings an ashram offering. If the owner said to the unpaid custodian, "Where's my deposit that I entrusted to your care?" and the custodian replied, "It was stolen, and I'm exempt from payment," and the owner then said to him, "I assure you that your response is true," And the custodian said, Amen. And afterwards, witnesses testify against the custodian that he stole it himself. The custodian pays the careful payment. Okay. Now, however, if the custodian admitted on his own accord, he pays the principal one for surcharge and brings an asham offering. I want to bring to your attention that there is a difference in this Mishnah between the claim from the custodian it was lost, and then they witnesses said that they claimed that he consumed him himself. Means it was either an animal or an item, etc. And the second excuse from the custodian was that it was stolen by another person. So if he claims it was lost due to a what do you call it, an unavoidable mishap, he's an unpaid custodian. He only pays the principal. If he claims another person stole it from him, he pays the careful payment, because his false oath is what makes him treated like a thief, where he pays double. So just bearing in mind that there is a distinction between the principal payment or the careful, depending if the claim was lost or stolen. Now, we learned on Mishnah 103 that one who stole and swore falsely and now seeks atonement must chase the victim at all costs, even if it means to a faraway land like Media. So we did touch on this, that if one robs his father and swore falsely to him in denial of the robbery, and the father dies and the son that admits his guilt, he pays the principal and one for surcharge to the father's other sons. Principally, that occurs before to his father's brothers. He only gives to his father's brothers if he's an only child. Okay? But if he does not wish to forfeit the portion of the robbery that he inherited, or he does not have the means to afford this forfeiture, he may borrow money from others and then return the robbery to the other heirs. And his creditors may then come and collect the debt from the portion of the property that is his rightful inheritance. So guys, I just need to explain that to you in greater detail. One's brothers, who is also heir to the father's wealth, comes before one's father's brothers. Okay? Now, what does it mean he does not wish to forfeit the portion of robbery that he should have inherited? Meaning, he might say that he's actually prepared to lose what he took, and pay the one for surcharge and an asham offering, but that he never took necessarily as much as he's punished for, and it would seem that he cannot receive any of the inheritance. So on that nature, he might take issue, but our Gemara is not concentrating on that. We're going to be concentrating on the issue of he does not have the means to afford the forfeiture of his share. So what does it mean he may borrow money from others and then return the robbery to the other heirs? And his creditors may then come and collect the debt from the portion of the robbed property that is his rightful inheritance. Now, guys, we discussed this the other day. Can you tell me what that is, since we covered it? Guys? Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm here. I can't. I'm not in a
Damon,
good
so
space.
you said his rightful
I got a bit disturbed as well there. Sorry, with something.
claim,
Just
his
that-
rightful. Just repeat that for us, please.
Yeah,
Okay,
to
so
repeat
there's-
us, maybe I could.
Oh, there.
do
No
something.
problem. So we're discussing an issue. We're not going to focus on the issue is of he does not wish to forfeit the portion of the robbery that he should have inherited, because there is a bit of a contradiction there. If he claimed afterwards that he was lying and he took a false oath, he has to pay the principal the one for surcharge and the asham offering. Okay, and that money he has at the moment. So he should have to give it up. So we're saying he's feeling this pull that he would have inherited it, and therefore, why should he really give it up? It's not like it's a stranger, it's part of his inheritance. So I'm not going to tackle that issue at the moment. It will be tackled, hopefully. But we're tackling the issue we dealt with on Saturday night, where it says he does not have the means to afford this forfeiture, and therefore he may borrow money from others and then return the robbery to the other heirs, and his creditors may then come and collect the debt of the portion of the robbed property that is his rightful inheritance. Now, I would like you guys to be able to explain that. Any of you were at the share on Saturday night. Arthur, you give a stab, because you've been with Patience a week. We haven't asked you much.
I have no idea. Only thing I can think of is it kind of sounds like a way of getting around it. Like he borrows the money from somewhere else, he gets his portion, and then they go claim it from the estate.
Okay, very good. Arthur, I'll give you 70%. That's not bad.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Okay.
So he's kind of getting around it.
All right.
Instead of
So it seems to deal with an issue of he does not wish to forfeit the portion of the robbery. Guys, my blood sugar's low, so my tongue's getting twisted. Sorry. He does not wish to forfeit the portion of the robbery that he should have inherited, or he does not have the means to forfeit, to afford this forfeiture. So it's exactly as Arthur said. Apologies. Sorry about my blood sugar. My tongue always gets twisted. So Arthur, that's pretty close. Okay, so I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to tackle Arthur's issue. Well, it's not really Arthur's issue. I would probably say.
No, I don't have an issue with it.
Arthur's only issue is that he was called to explain it. Other than that, Arthur didn't have any issue with it.
And I locked it up.
Yeah, that's why Arthur's always busy with Patience. It's higher prop. Okay. So, Kevin, do you have any thoughts on the issue before we tackle it?
Does it relate to the that the guy stole from his father, then there was an inheritance that the father passed away. So
okay, so I
does it
mean,
have any link to that? And then he was going to inherit from his father. So
okay, so let's take a bit of what Kevin's saying and a bit of what Arthur's saying. So, Kevin, although
Can I give it a stat? Isn't it kind of like with the son? He feels it's his anyway because it was his father's.
So
and
that's
he's trying to get around it.
Correct. That was the first portion. The first portion is irritated because it exactly implies that. What it's implying is it's saying, look, at the end of the day, he doesn't wish to forfeit the portion of a robbery because he feels he should have inherited it. It's not like he took from a stranger, exactly as Arthur said. And the other emphasis is, okay, so it might be a case where he doesn't have the means to afford this forfeiture, meaning that he's lowly strapped on cash. So Arthur, let's deal with it. So although the robber is the father's heir, he may not keep that which he stole, not even the portion of it that is rightfully his inheritance, whether he likes it or not, because he's got to fulfill the dictate to return stolen property. He caused this. If he had just waited for his father to die like any patient son, he wouldn't have had a problem. So if the father was survived by other sons, meaning his brothers, who are also heirs, the robber pays the entire principal and the surcharge to those other sons, his brothers. He doesn't get to keep it, he gets to forfeit it. And if the father left no other sons, but had himself maybe a brother or etc., the robber pays the principal and the surcharge to the father's brothers or brother, whoever are next in line to inherit him after his children. And this is from Bava Basra 115a. Now, thank God none of us want our fathers to pass on. We all would rather have our fathers than the money. But these are wicked, sometimes they are wicked people. So Rashi states that the Mishnah refers to a case where the robber admitted his guilt after the father's death. Now you might say, well, how could that elicit such a response? Because the question is, maybe if he admitted this while the father was alive, as we know that the father could forgive him of the crime, and then he doesn't. We learned this in the Mishnah 103a. If you are forgiven of the principal or the surcharge, then you don't have to pay it back. So maybe he's kicking himself now that he never admitted it to his father and said to him, Dad, I was strapped of cash. I didn't know what to do. I'm ashamed, because now he'd get a share of his inheritance. So Arthur hit on the right note. Maybe he feels irritated with that. Or it could be, as Rashi says, that there's a certain amount of guilt. A person feels that the father was very good to him and all the son did is steal. So the implication is that if he confessed during the father's lifetime, either way, guys, he would be able to keep the portion of the theft that was due to him as his share of the estate. So the Maharsha doesn't agree with Rashi's explanation. He objects strongly to the suggestion because he argues, regardless of whether the son confessed after the father died or before the father died, he's got to eliminate the stolen property from his possession. In other words, the Maharsha says it's not up to the victim to forgive. He's having property. What constitutes forgiveness, as Gavin once famously said? You can talk all you want, Gavin said, but unless you make restitution, it's all words. I like that, what Gavin said that, by the way. Made a lot of sense to me, and so it does to the Maharsha. Maharsha is not only where Gavin davens. So,
no, that's why I used to daven. I left there.
So, example, guys, the robber has two brothers. So then by right, Arthur inherits 1/3. Now listen to this example. Okay. So the robber has two brothers that by right inherits 1/3 of the property that he stole. Each brother gets 1/3 and he gets 1/3. So he borrows an amount equal to the value of the stolen property, and the creditors may confiscate 1/3 of the stolen property in payment of 1/3 of his debt, and then collect the remaining 2/3 directly from him. So the guy now has stolen, Arthur stole 90,000, right? He stole all the property. Okay. Don't know where he's gone. Okay, so let me explain to the story. So the guy's got 900 zuz that he stole from his father, an absolute fortune. And what happens is his one brother's entitled to 300 zuz. He's entitled to 300 zuz, obviously barring his little money-grabbing stunt. And his other brother is entitled to 300 zuz. So we'll call them, for the sake of Bob Newhart, Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. Here's my brother Larry. This is my other brother Larry. This is my brother Daryl. Where was that from? Bob Newhart. Remember that in the 80s. So anyway, Arthur, he works out this cockamamie scheme, right? So what he does is he borrows 900 zuz, and he shows he's good for it. And what happens is he basically makes sure that the brothers' portions are paid for by him, and he leaves. So the 300 zuz, the creditors attach. So this way, he's actually almost like used the third in that particular way. Do you get what I'm saying? So he's made use of creditors to confiscate his third of the stolen property in payment of 1/3 of his debt. And then they collect the remaining 2/3 from him. That's the example that the Schottenstein uses. It doesn't make sense to me, because why would you want to get the brothers to have their amount confiscated? So
Yeah,
I don't want to use it.
Damon, what's confusing is he stole 900 zuz. Okay? He hasn't returned the 900 zuz. Now he's borrowed another 900 zuz against his inheritance.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying the Gemara's example in Schottenstein, not the Gemara, in their notes, is to me not a good example, because it highlights Arthur's issue is that basically he's stealing more money from his brothers. So my example is something different, okay? Is that he gives, if he stole 900 zuz and he's got 2 other brothers, he gives each brother 300 zuz and 300 zuz, okay? And then what he does is he technically keeps the 300 zuz and gets himself into debt and goes to Hawaii and has wine, woman, and song, and has himself a real jewel for the 300,000 zuz, and he signs for it, and the local creditors come and attach his portion. So in other words, he had a free holiday because he was not allowed to get benefit of his holiday, and therefore they attached that. That is my example. Does that make more sense, Arthur? I can't hear you.
Because I mean, it doesn't make sense how you can take 900, get another 900. I mean, that's the deal. The brothers would lose. So, understand, if you lose a third and they take and give 2/3, it makes 900 anyway.
Exactly. So I'm using my own example. I don't agree with the Schottenstein example. So if he borrows 1/3 of the value of the theft, and the portion of the robbed property that the creditors confiscate covers his entire debt. Okay, that's my example. And the robber fulfills the deed, this edict, right, that to return that which he was robbed without forfeiting his share. In other words, he has a good time with it, and the creditors take it, but he can't use it and get benefit himself. But he can almost use the system at which there's another way he can do it, Arth. If he really, really is in lachatz, what he should do is he should buy food for the year and everything from creditors and show he's got that 1/3 debt. And when they come and collect it, that's another way to have a proper return. Because his only obligation is fulfilling the mitzvah is to return the stolen property by giving each of his brothers 1/3, and using the credit system that he borrowed money of his portion of the robbery and pledge it as collateral. And that way, when the creditors confiscate the payment of his debt and he's bought food with it and everything that he needs, he's not in breach, because they removed the stolen property from him. So although he never regains possession of it, he certainly benefited by getting food from it, because he couldn't afford the forfeiture. Do you like my example, Arthur? Is my example better? Is it reasonable?
Yeah, I think we need to write that book that you and Gavin are talking about, how to get around every system.
Yeah, no, it's
listen,
true,
listen, I'm already halfway in, and Damon's twice as good as me, so we can catch it up quite easily.
Yeah.
Damon?
Okay, so this makes a little bit more sense. I want Kevin to read the last portion for a
No,
second.
can you repeat that for me? My mind was
Okay.
what you just said.
So what we are saying is there was a section that the robber is quite irritated, Kevin, because if he admitted to his father when his father was alive, his father could have forgiven him of the debt, and therefore he would have been entitled to his share of the rightful inheritance. But because he didn't do that, he now feels he doesn't want to forfeit the money. So that was the explanation of Rashi. The other explanation from Rashi is that the Mishnah is talking about, well, maybe he can't afford to agree to the forfeiture because he's in terrible financial damage. So that's why he might have stolen the money in the first place. We don't know. So in any event, according to Rashi, we're not sure if he swore falsely and afterwards admitted to it because he was grieving over his father and he came to confess, and then he has to pay the principal, the one for surcharge and the asham offering. And therefore he can't keep any of the stolen property. According to the Maharsha, it doesn't matter at whatever point he admitted to his father that he swore falsely. The minute there was a false oath, if there's atonement, he forfeits the principal, the one for surcharge and as an asham offering. Doesn't matter whether it was before the father was alive or after. However, if he stole the money and then admitted to his father could have forgiven him of the debt. But according to the Maharshi, he has to pay it back either way. So what we are saying is, if the son is quite poor, how does he get around this sort of issue? And that, Kevin, is very simple. If, for example, there was 900 zuz, then quite simply, he gives 300 zuz to his one brother, 300 zuz, Kevin, to the other brother. Kevin, you falling asleep? The oldest brother gets 300 zuz, the youngest brother gets 300 zuz, and his 300 zuz, he goes to buy food and whatever he needs in his house, etc., and signs it over a suretyship to creditors. When the creditors come and collect it, they've attached what was stolen money, so it's as if he's given it back, but he's also benefited from 300 zuz using creditors' money. So it was a way for him to get out of trouble and to use the money in a beneficent manner. Okay? Now I want you to read something, because a second. Kevin, here, just read this part. The Tana discusses.
The Tana discusses another case in which this device may be employed to enable someone to benefit from his inheritance. Regarding one who says to his son, Konam, if you benefit from what is mine, if he dies, the son inherits him and may derive benefit from the inherited property. If, however, he declares his property prohibited to his son during his lifetime and after his death, then if he dies, the son does not inherit him, and he must return his portion of the estate to his father's, to the father's other sons or to the father's brothers. And if he does not have anything to eat, he borrows money for food, and the creditors may then come and collect the debt from his portion of the estate.
Okay. All right. So all we are saying as far as that's concerned is that they use the interchangeable term konam korban. In other words, it's an offering. So what does it mean? It means loosely, any benefit that you may derive from our property is hereby forbidden to you like a temple offering. So in the one case, the father said, listen, you can't use any of my stuff while I'm alive. Then in the other case, the father said, whether I'm alive or dead, you can't use any of my stuff. So in that particular case, there's a problem because the son cannot get any sort of benefit whatsoever. So we have to use a similar sort of method if the son is down and out broke. Okay, and what method is that? Well, it's a method to say that if the son is in dire need that he can't even afford food, okay, he can use it where he gets a creditor and he goes to buy the food, etc. And in that particular way, they take it from the prohibited estate. Whatever he was going to inherit, they take it because his father didn't want him to get benefit, because we need to make sure that the son has something to eat. But if the son is of means, we don't afford him that ability to return the property and use it to negotiate for food. And the reason for the distinction is that in the first case where the son stole from his father, who subsequently died, the son isn't prohibited to derive benefit from the stolen property. The only reason, guys, he can't keep it is he's got to fulfill the mitzvah of returning that which he stole. And since he fulfills the mitzvah, even if creditors subsequently confiscate it from the heirs, he can arrange for them to do so at his discretion. It's fine. In this latter case, where the father prohibited the son in his life or death from actually benefiting from the father's property, the device of having a creditor collect from the estate in that case is obviously employed for one reason, and that's to circumvent starvation. And it's also to circumvent a prohibition, because the rabbis allowed him to rely on it only when he has dire circumstances and nothing else to eat. But it seems as though technically in a case of where he has to return the stolen produce, okay, in that particular case, because the father never banned him from using it, he can kind of use the creditor process even if he's not in dire trouble, but just doesn't want to forfeit his inheritance. That's why it's much more loose. Now, just two things that we need to learn quickly is the Gemara comments regarding the Mishnah's ruling that the son who robbed his father must return the theft to the other heirs. Rav Yosef said, even if he finds that he has no brothers, or his father never had brothers, there are no other heirs. He must remove the theft from his possession, even by donating it to the coffers of the charity fund. And then a further comment, Rav Papa said, when giving the money to charity, he must say, this is the robbed property of my father. Meaning he has to be clear when he gives to this special charity that he's not a tzaddik and a generous person. And they say, oh, shakayach, look what you're giving. Look what you're donating to charity. He's got to inform the officer or the trustee of the charity or the treasurer, whatever the case may be. The fact of it is he's a thief, and he's returning this money to charity because he doesn't have brothers, and his father doesn't have brothers, and there's no other heir. Okay, according to Rav Papa, this distinction has to, you can't give him a big yeshakayach and make him seem like he's this magnanimous guy, when in fact he has to do this for his atonement. He has to feel a bit of embarrassment for the atonement. And Rashi implies that the robber is required to make that statement only when he gives money to charity, but not when the heirs take it. So in other words, if he gives it to his brothers, he doesn't have to admit that he necessarily took it. But the Rambam turns around and says, in all cases, the brothers must know what their other brother was like. And therefore, there has to be an open declaration. Okay? So what we're going to do is discuss coming up how Rav Yosef Haglili and how Rabbi Akiva deals with these various issues. I was a bit out of it on Saturday night. Was this bit of clarity helpful to any of you? Judging from the fact that you didn't know it offhand, I would reckon so. Kev, you enjoy your sleep?
A bit.
Okay. That's honest.
How much did I
Damon,
sleep?
you asked me, what did you say? No, I'm kidding.
But I liked what Kevin said tonight, though. I think it's an important part to realize everything comes from a